B'siyata d'shmaya, we're going to learn Moed Katan Daf Yud. We're going to start 4 lines from the bottom of Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Tonu Rabbanon, we learned in a brisa, Kashem she'omru osu legaleach b'moed, in the same way as we've learnt, and we saw in the Mishnah at the beginning of the Perek that one's not allowed to have a haircut on Chol HaMoed, Kach osu litel tzipornayim b'moed, Divi Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that the same applies to cutting one's nails, that one is not allowed to cut one's nails on Chol HaMoed. Rabbi Yossi argues and says one is allowed to cut one's nails on Chol HaMoed. Ukashem she'omru ovel osu legaleach b'mei evloi, kach osu litel tzipornayim b'mei evloi. Similarly, regarding the period of mourning, in the same way as one's not allowed to have a haircut whilst in mourning, so too one's not allowed to cut one's nails. Divi Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi matir, again Rabbi Yossi is lenient and says one is allowed to cut one's nails during mourning. Omar Ula, halacha Rabbi Yehuda ba'ovel, regarding avelus, Ula says the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, that an ovel is not allowed to cut his nails, v'halacha Rabbi Yossi b'moed, but regarding Chol HaMoed, one is allowed to cut one's nails on Chol HaMoed. Shmuel Omar, Shmuel argued with Ula and said halacha Rabbi Yossi, the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, who takes a more lenient line, b'moed u'ba'ovel, also in Chol HaMoed and also during avelus, one is allowed to cut one's nails. The Omar Shmuel, halacha k'divrei hamekel ba'ovel, this is a rule, we're going to see more about this later on in the Masechta, that Shmuel says that in the halachas of mourning, of avelus, then we always follow the lenient opinion. Continues the Gemara, Pinchas achua de Mar Shmuel. Pinchas, the brother of Mar Shmuel, is Rabbi Milsa. So and Rashi says that his son died and something bad happened to him. Old Shmuel, his brother Shmuel, went up Lemish'al taimo minei, in order to console him, to ask him how he was feeling. Chazinu letufra dehaven afishon, and Shmuel noticed that the nails of his brother Pinchas were long. Omar le, so Shmuel asked his brother, Amai lo yishakris lehu, why didn't you cut your nails? Omar le, so Pinchas answered to Mar Shmuel, Ibadidei hava, if you would be in mourning, mimazalzeles bei kulehai, would you treat the mourning period so lightly and cut your nails? And havoi kishgogo sheyotze milifnei hashalit. This is a pasuk where the pasuk in Kehelah says, Yesh ro'o ro'isi tachas hashemesh kishgogo sheyotze milifnei hashalit. There's a concept of an error that comes out from before the ruler, and that means that Pinchas, almost in error, he said, he mentioned, he verbalized that to Shmuel, if you would be in mourning. And what happened was, V'isra be Milsa b'Shmuel, and indeed that caused on some level that Shmuel would be in mourning, and one of Shmuel's relatives passed away. At this time it was Pinchas' turn to go and console him. Old Pinchas achua, his brother Pinchas, went up to Shmuel, lemish el taima minei, to ask him how he was feeling, to console him. Shoklinu letorfei, and then Shmuel took the nails that he had cut, and chovtinu le'apei, and threw it to Pinchas. He was angry, was annoyed at Pinchas. Omar le, he said to his brother Pinchas, Les lechod, do you not understand the concept of bris krusolis fosaim, that there is a covenant that was made with the lips, that words that come out of the lips are very powerful. You were the one that, when I asked you about your nails, you were the one that said to me if I would be in mourning, and here I am now in mourning. The Omer Rabbi Yochanan said, Minayin shebris krusolis fosaim, what would be the source that there is a covenant that was made with the lips? Shenemar, it says in the Pasuk, in the Chumash, Vayomer Avraham el Naorov, Avraham Avinu said to the youngs, those who went with him, Shvu lochem poi, you stay here, im hachamoyer, with the donkey, va'ani va'anar, and I and Yitzchok neilcho ad koi, we're going to go till there, v'nishtachve, we're going to bow to Hashem, we're going to serve Hashem, v'noshuva aleichem, and we, in plural, will return to you. V'staya milsa, and you can see that the matter was effective, and indeed, even though Avram at the time assumed he was going to shecht Yitzchok at the Akedah, but he came back with Yitzchok. The actual shechting didn't take place. The Hodor Tarvayu, both of them returned to that place. So that is what Shmuel said to Pinchas. Are you not aware that there's a covenant that was made with the lips? You've got to be careful with what you say. Savur Minei. The Chachomim, they understood from Shmuel that when Shmuel said before that one is allowed to cut one's nails, the yad in, that's only the nails of a person's hands are allowed to be cut. The regel loy, but the nails of a person's feet, his toes, he's not allowed to cut. Omer of Onon bar Tachlifa. Rav Onon bar Tachlifa said, "Ledidim efarsheli minei de Shmuel." The way I understood Shmuel is loishno de yad v'loishno de regel. It makes no difference if it's the nails of the fingers or the nails of the toes, and either way, it was permitted. Omar of Chia bar Ashi Omar Rav ubegan nustera. But however, to cut nails with scissors, osa, that is osir. Continues the Gemara, Omar of Shimon bar Abba. Rav Shimon bar Abba said, "Hava koimno kamed Rabbi Yochanan bei midrasha b'choilei shel moed." I was standing before Rabbi Yochanan in the Beis HaMedrash on Chol HaMoed. V'shoklinu letufrei b'shinei, and we saw that Rabbi Yochanan, he actually cut his nails using his teeth. He bit off his nails on Chol HaMoed v'zorkinu, and he threw the nails down. Shma mino tlas. We learned from that Rabbi Yochanan did. We learned 3 halachas. Shma mino muter litel tzipornayim b'choilei shel moed. Number 1, we see that one's allowed to cut one's nails on Chol HaMoed. Ushma mino, another thing we find, ein b'hem mishum mius, that it's not repulsive to remove one's nails. And there's a discussion here whether the not repulsiveness is the fact that he did it with his teeth, or if the not repulsiveness is that he did it in public. But either way, Rabbi Yochanan with his teeth bit off his nails in public. Ushma mino muter lezerkon. And we see from Rabbi Yochanan that it's permitted to throw the nails even in a public place. He was in the Beis HaMedrash. Asks the Gemara, Eini, we have an issue with that. Is that so? V'otanya, did we not learn in a brisa? Shloisha dvarim nemru b'tzipornayim. 3 things are said relating to the nails. Number 1, hakoivron, the person who buries them, tzaddik, he's a righteous person. Because we'll soon see that if one leaves them around, one throws them on the floor, it can cause harm. So somebody who goes out of his way to bury them, so they should be out of sight and not be able to hurt anyone, is a righteous person. Soirfon, if you go to the extent beyond the letter of the law, not only to bury them that they could get unburied, but you're even going to burn them so they should be totally gone, chosid, that's a pious person. Zerkon, if you throw them on the floor where people can walk on them, Rasha, he's a wicked person. So you see here that Zerkon Rasha, how could Rabbi Yochanan throw the nails in the public place? Answers the Gemara, Taimamai, what's the reason that we just saw here in the Brisa that Zerkon Rasha is Shemot Ta'avir Alein Isha Ubra? Maybe a pregnant woman will pass over them, V'tapil, and she will miscarry, either because she'll be revolted by the nails, or it's something sgula, something which is supernatural, that just there is such a power, a property of nails that when a pregnant woman walks over them, it can cause her harm. And Ishoki Bei Midrasha Lo Yishchicha. And it's not common for a woman to be in the Beis HaMedrash, and therefore Rabbi Yochanan understood that to throw the nails on the floor in the Beis HaMedrash is not an issue. Says the Gemara, V'chi Teima, are you going to ask that Zimnin sometimes the Michnashi Lahu, that the nails will get collected when people are sweeping up the Beis HaMedrash, V'shadi Lahu Abroi, and they'll be thrown outside of the Beis HaMedrash, and again a woman could pass over them. It could be dangerous. Why was Rabbi Yochanan not afraid of that? Says the Gemara, no. Kiven de Ishtani. Once they've changed their location, they're not so repulsive anymore, they don't have that power anymore, and there's no risk, it's not a danger anymore to a woman. Continues the Gemara, Omer of Yehuda Marav. Zug, there was this pair of Talmidei Chachomim, Bo Michamoson, who came from the place called Chamoson. Lifnei Rebbe, came before Rebbe. And then the Gemara says, Umar Zutra, Masni. First it was Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav. Mar Zutra said this was actually a brisa relating that Zug Bo Michamoson Lifnei Rebbe, that a pair of Talmidei Chachomim came to Rebbe, before Rebbe, from a place called Chamoson. Ubikshu mimenu, and they asked him the following question: Tzipornaim, is one allowed to cut one's nails? And there's a discussion whether this is talking about the time of Avelus, which is what Rashi seems to say. Others say that it's talking. The question was regarding Chol HaMoed. The Rashi Xavier, I think, says that. Either way, it's a machlekas here exactly what we're talking about. But either way, v'hitir lahem, Rebbe said it was mutter. V'imbikshu mimenu, and this is Rav Yehuda or Mar Zutra, or they said that if you would have asked him, Sofa, are you allowed to cut your moustache? Hitur lahem, he would have allowed that as well. Shmuel actually says, they actually did ask Rabbi, are we allowed to cut our moustache? And he allowed it to them. He said it was okay for them to cut the moustache. Omar Avitul Safra, Avitul the scribe said, Mishmeider of Papa, in the name of Rav, that Safa, the moustache, is mizovis from one corner of the mouth to the other corner of the mouth, because that's the part which disturbs and interferes the being able to eat, and therefore it's repulsive to eat that way with the moustache in front of one's mouth, and therefore one was allowed to remove that part of the moustache. Omer of Ami, ubesofo hamakeves. And Rav Ami said also that it's talking about the part of the moustache which is getting in the way of the eating. Omer Reb Nachman bar Yitzchok. Nachman bar Yitzchok says, Ledidi, I am a very big anina daita, I'm a very particular type of person and get very easily bothered. And kasofa makeves doimeli, that the whole moustache for me, it bothers me, and therefore somebody like me is allowed to remove and cut the entire moustache. V'omar Avitul Safra Mishmeid Rav, another statement from the same scribe Avitul in the name of Rav. Pari, the king Pari, Shahoya b'mei Moshe, that we famously know about, the infamous Pari by the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Hu Amo, he was an Amatol, Zukonoi Amo, and his beard was an Amatol, Uparmashtakoi, and his member was Amo Vazeres, was 1.5 amos long. Lekaima Shenema, this is to comply with what it says in the Pasuk. The Pasuk says, Ushfal Anoshim, and the lowest of man, Yakim Alei, Hashem appoints over the world. And Pari was this very low, in all understandings, a lowly person and a short person. V'omar Avitul Safra, another statement from this scribe Avitul, Mishmei Rav, Parish Hoya b'mei Moshe Amgushi Hoya, and the Gemara in Masechet Shabbos Daf Ayin Hey discusses what the word Amgushi means. Does it mean a sorcerer? Does it mean a blasphemer? Either he used to do sorcery, and therefore he used to go down to the Nile to do his sorcery there, or he used to blaspheme and used to say that I'm God and I created the Nile. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, Hine Yotza Maimo, that Pari would go down to the Nile, to the river, to the water, and that was this last statement of Rav, that Pari was this Amgushi. Continues the Gemara, and this takes us back to our Mishnah. Ve'elu mechabsin b'moed, the following are allowed to launder their clothes on Chol HaMoed, and one of them is Habam in Medina Sayom, somebody who comes from overseas, somebody who was in captivity, who was in jail, as we saw in the Mishnah. Omer Rabasi, Omer Rabbi Yechanan, it was said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, Mi she'ein le'ela choluk echod, somebody who's only got a single tunic, mutar lechabse b'chol shel moed, he's allowed to wash it on Chol HaMoed, and we already spoke about this on Daf Yudalad Amud Aleph. Mosiv Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah now asks a question. If you're going to say that somebody with a single cloak, a single tunic, is allowed to wash on Chol HaMoed, then Eilu mechabsim b'moed habam Medina Sayom v'chulu. The Mishnah just says the following are allowed to launder their clothes, and somebody who comes from overseas, etc. There's a list in the Mishnah of people, Hani En, and only those mentioned in the Mishnah are allowed to launder their clothes. But Misha Ein Lo Ela Choluk Echod, the Mishnah doesn't say that if you only have one tunic, you're also in the bracket of somebody who's allowed to launder their clothes. So how can you, Rabbi Yechanan, say that if you only have one garment, you can wash it on Chol HaMoed? Why does the Mishnah not say it? Omalei Rav Yaakov le Rabbi Yirmiyah. So Rav Yaakov said to Rabbi Yirmiyah to answer this question that Rabbi Yirmiyah asked against Rabbi Yechanan, Asber Elocha, I'll explain it to you. The Mishnah is only talking about people who have more than one garment. And the Masnisin, Afel Gavdi Islay Trey Umetanfi, that the Mishnah is talking about that the people who have normal people who have two garments, there's never an excuse to have to wash on Chol HaMoed. You wash them both before Yom Tov, and then you have enough to get you through Chol HaMoed. But somebody and the Mishnah is now saying, if you have two garments, the following cases would allow you to wash even on Chol HaMoed, and it gives a list. But somebody who's only got one garment, then there's nothing to do with the list that the Mishnah is discussing. Somebody who's only got one garment, Rabbi Yechanan said he's allowed to wash on Chol HaMoed. Continues the Gemara, Sholach Rav Yitzchok bar Yaakov bar Giyuri Mishmeid Rabbi Yechanan. The following statement was sent in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Klei pishton, linen garments, mutar lechovson b'chol shel moed. There is very little effort in washing them, and therefore one's allowed to wash them on Chol HaMoed. Mosiv Rava. Now Rava's asking a question that we learnt on Daf Yudalad Amud Aleph, that mitpachas yadayim, which are towels, hand towels, and amongst mitpachas hasaporim, and the cloths used by the barbers, they're allowed to be washed on Chol HaMoed. Hani'in, only them, yes, but klei pishton loy. But linen garments as a rule, to say that all linen garments you're allowed to wash on Chol HaMoed, it didn't say before. So Rav is asking a question, how can you, Rabbi Yochanan, say that all linen garments are allowed to be washed on Chol HaMoed? It's not what we learned before. Omar le Abaya. Abaya answered Rav's question. Masnis in the Mishnah that we were speaking about is afilu deshar mini. It's talking about any other materials. It means linen materials you're always allowed to wash on Chol HaMoed if you need them. However, other materials that are more difficult to wash, you're not allowed to. But there's exceptions, and the Mishnah's got the exceptions of what type of garments, of clothing, of materials are allowed to be washed if they're not linen. And what are they? There's, as we said, the mitpachus yodayim, there's the mitpachus hasaporim, amongst others mentioned in the Mishnah. But that's that even though they are more difficult to wash, one's allowed to wash them on Chol HaMoed. But linen garments are not an issue to wash on Chol HaMoed, as Rabbi Yochanan said. Omar bar Hidya said, Ledidi chozili, I saw on Chol HaMoed Yamo shel Tveria, at the seaside of Tveria, the mafkila, they were taking out masichli, demoni kisna, bowls of linen garments, b'chol HaMoed, on Chol HaMoed. So you see that they would wash these clothes on Chol HaMoed. Maskifla Abaya questioned that. Man leimelon, don't bring me proof from what you saw these people doing on the side of the Sea of Tveria. Man leimelon de'b'ratzoin chachamim avdi. Who says that the chachamim were okay with what they were doing? Dilma shlei b'ratzoin chachamim avdi. Maybe they were going against the halacha. Maybe they were not allowed to do it. You can't bring me proof from what people were doing. Continues the next Mishnah. Ve'elu koisvin b'moed. The following are a list of documents, letters that one is allowed to write on Chol HaMoed. The common denominator between all of them is that if you don't write them, it could afterwards cause a loss. If you wait till after Yom Tov, either you won't find who to write them, or people will deny them, or whatever the case is going to be, that therefore it's important that you write them on Chol HaMoed to make sure that you don't have any losses. And we've learned previously in the Masechta that in order to avoid a loss, one is allowed to do malachas on Chol HaMoed. We're not going to discuss this list at length. Many or most of these on the list are going to be discussed at great length later on in Shas, but we're just going to read what it says in the Mishnah. Kiddushin Noshim, one of the ways of doing Kiddushin, we know you give a ring. That's called Shava Pruta. Kesef, that's called money. But there's another way, amongst others, of how to be Mekadesh a woman, and that is to write a document. You write on a shtar, Hariat Mukudeshesli. You're allowed to write that on Chol HaMoed. Kiddushin Noshim, V'gitin, or bills of divorce, V'shoivrin, receipts, Daisaki, which is a will written by somebody who's on his sickbed, on his deathbed, Matana, a gift, or Pruzbelin, which is a pruzbel, that the person who is owed money writes that he's giving over the debts that people owe him to the Beis Din, and that way, even though Shemitah arrives, it will not nullify the loans. We'll learn more about that later on in Shas. Igrois Shum, letters of evaluation, the Igrois Mozoin, or commitments that somebody makes to offer support. For example, if somebody committed himself to support his wife's daughter, his stepdaughter, that needs to be documented. Shtori Chalitza Umiunin, we'll learn about that in Maseches Yevomis. Or Shtori Birurim, or if the Beis Din, they selected what property is against what property, when you've got brothers or partners that are splitting property equally, and we need Beis Din to determine what goes against what, that needs to be recorded. Gzeres Beis Din, which is court edicts. Ve'igres Sharashus, or government letters. These are all documents that if they're not written on time, could cause tremendous harm if one waits, if one delays, and therefore they may be written on Chol HaMoed. Says the Gemara Omar Shmuel. Now nowadays, there's what we call an engagement that halachically speaking, biblically speaking, has no relevance whatsoever. Not he nor she is actually married in any sense of the word after a typical engagement. In the time of Chazal, the marriage would be two parts. There would be the Kiddushin, which is what today is done when one gives the ring, and then there's the Chuppah, which is the Nisuin. We're going to learn more about this later on in Seder Noshim. But there's the chuppah, the nisuin. Before nisuin, she's married, but one's not allowed to. There's many halachas of marriage that only start after nisuin. So this Shmuel said that one is so the erusin is the kiddushin, which is just the first half, and after kiddushin she is actually an eishes ish, but they can't resume marital relations till after the nisuin. So Shmuel says mutar la'aris isha b'chilui shel moed, and the Ritva explains that really acquiring a woman should be also like any transaction is also to do on chol hamoed if it's not necessary for Yom Tov. However, Shmuel says that if not for that, Shmuel says one is allowed to do it on chol hamoed. Why? Shemu yukadmenu achir. Because if you don't do the kiddushin and marry this woman now, right now, when she's accepting and ready to agree to get married, somebody else might come and marry her in the meantime, and you'll have lost your wife. We're going to bring proof to that. From the Mishnah of Eilu Koisvim b'Moed, the following are allowed to be written on chol hamoed, Kiddushin Noshim. And we assume at this point, what does Kiddushin Noshim mean? As we explained when we learnt the Mishnah, that you're writing on a shtar Hariat Mekudeshesli, which is the Kiddushin. It's what the Gemara calls Erusin. So you see, you're allowed to do that on chol hamoed. Ma'elav shtori Kiddushin Mamash. So we have proof to what Shmuel said, that one's allowed to do Kiddushin on chol hamoed. Says the Gemara, you don't have proof from the Mishnah. Loi. Shtori psikta. It could be that this is just the documents which is just writing down what the parents of the groom and the bride, the chosn and the kala, what they committed themselves to allot to the young couple. Ukter of Gidla Marav, as of Gidl said in the name of Rav, the Omer of Gidla Marav. Kama atanoisin levonecha. How much are you, the father of the chosn, how much are you happy to give? Kach v'kach, X amount. Kama atanoisin lebitcha. How much are you happy to give for your daughter? Kach v'kach, such and such an amount. And omdu v'kitru, in the event that the young couple, or the couple, they actually get married, konu, then those commitments are then binding. Hein hein advorim haniknin ba'amira. This is one of the examples of things where the actual binding of the commitment is even without actually doing a new kinyan. It's just by the amira, by just having spoken it out, having verbalized it, and then they get married, it's already binding. So it could be that when it says here in our Mishnah, Kiddushin Noshim, it doesn't mean the actual Kiddushin, it means these commitments have to be written down, that we committed ourselves, we discussed the following, and these are the conclusions we came to. The parents of the groom are giving so much, the parents of the bride are giving so much, and therefore you don't have proof from our Mishnah to what Shmuel says that you can actually do the Kiddushin on chol hamoed. We'll try and bring another proof to Shmuel from a Mishnah. Ein noisin noshim b'moed. We already learnt about this on Daf Yomi Shiur. One's not allowed to marry on chol hamoed, the nisuin. Loi besulois, not women who have never been married before. V'loi almonis are not widows. V'loi miyabmin, nor does one do yibum, which is something we'll discuss in Masechet Yevomis. Mipnei shesimcha hiloi, because it's a big simcha for him to get married and to do the nisuin. So you see in the Mishnah there, nisuin you're not allowed to do. That's the second half of the marriage ceremony. Hola aris, but to do the kiddushin, which is the first half of the ceremony, shari, that would be mutar. So we have proof to Shmuel. Says the Gemara Loi. It could be there's no proof from there either. Loi mi boya ka'omar. It's like loi mi boya. Not only. That means there's more reason to allow nisuin over kiddushin, and the Mishnah is coming to impress on that even the nisuin is not allowed, and it goes without saying that kiddushin should not be allowed. Why would that be true? Loi mi boya la'aris, because the kiddushin loi ka'ovid mitzvah. You can't do the mitzvah of pruruvu, of having children yet, because it's only kiddushin, it's not yet nisuin. Elo afilu lisanami, even nisuin, the ka'ovid mitzvah, where you're doing the mitzvah of pruruvu by doing the nisuin, asur. It's also asa on chol hamoed, and it goes without saying that even the kiddushin would be asa. Since that could be how to understand the Mishnah, you have no proof from the Mishnah for Shmuel. Toshima. We saw in the Brisa, the Tana de Beis Shmuel, a Brisa that was learnt in the academy in the yeshiva of Shmuel. Ma'arusin, on chol hamoed, one's allowed to do the erusin, avaloi koinsin, one doesn't do the knisa, the taking her into the home, called nisuin, called chuppah. Ve'enoisin su'udas erusin, and even the erusin, the kiddushin you do, it used to be accompanied by a su'uda, that you don't do on chol hamoed. V'loi miyabmin, nor yibum mipnei shesimcha iloi, because of the simcha we saw in Daf Ches. Why there's an issue of having extra simcha on Chol HaMoed besides for the simcha of Yom Tov? Shma Minah, from this brayso you see clearly, like Shmuel said, that one is allowed to do kiddushin on Chol HaMoed. Continues the Gemara, Yomar Shmuel, because Shmuel explained, why are you allowed to do kiddushin? Even though there would be reason not to, as we said from the Ritva, it's like any other transaction, is because Shemo Yekadmenu Acher, maybe somebody else will grab this woman before you get a chance to. So, Umiyomar Shmuel, Shemo Yekadmenu Acher, does Shmuel say have such a concept? V'Omer of Yodam Shmuel, did Shmuel himself not say, B'chol yoim v'yoim, every day Baskel yotzes v'oimeres, a heavenly voice emanates and says, Bas ploini leploini, the daughter of this person is going to marry this person. Sode ploini leploini, this field is going to go to this person. So you see clearly it's been predestined who's going to marry who. So why would one assume that if you don't marry her quick enough now on Chol HaMoed, somebody else will get her? Nobody else can take your wife, the woman destined for you. Not that somebody else can take your wife. Nobody can take your wife. But somebody else might daven to Hashem and say, it will bother me so much that this woman is marrying this other person, that please Hashem, make her die, rather than let me see her marrying him. And that's not necessarily a contradiction to that Baskel. And that's what it means. Maybe somebody's going to daven to Hashem, this woman should die. And then this person will not get his wife, and that's why Shmuel said you should get married to her immediately before anyone can do that. Kihad Rava, as we see this from an incident with Rava, Shomei Lahu Gavra, he heard this person, the boy Yerachme, he was begging, davening Hashem, V'Omar, and he said to Hashem, Tizdamen li planita, please let that specific particular woman be my wife. Omar Le, Rava said to this person, you shouldn't ask Hashem for that particular wife. You can daven. We saw in the Gemara and Brachos, you should daven all the time. From when you're young, you should be davening to find the right wife. But don't daven for a specific woman. If she's fit for you, if Hashem had predestined this is your wife, then it won't slip away from you. And if it's not a wife that is fit for you, and you're begging Hashem to give you that particular woman, and your tefillas obviously will not be answers, kofras b'Hashem, you'll end up denying, and you'll be kofer in Hashem, and you'll say, oh, tefillah doesn't work. Basahachi. At some point later, Rava heard this person, Shomei Duk Omar, he heard this person that was saying to Hashem that it will cause me so much pain if this woman marries this other person, or that means, Oy ihu leimus mikamo. Either let me, this person was saying, talking about himself, either this person himself should die before she marries this other person, so that I shouldn't have the grief and the pain of seeing her marry somebody else, or that she should die before she marries that other person. And again, Omale, Rava said to this person, did I not tell you, that you shouldn't be davening and begging in this way? You shouldn't be davening like this. But what do we see from here? That a person can daven that a certain woman should die before marrying somebody else. And that's what Shmuel says. If you have a wife that is happy to get married to you and is fit for you, take her on Chol HaMoed before somebody else possibly davens that she should die before you get her. Continues the Gemara, Omar Rav Bishum Reb Reuven ben Atzturbili. Min HaTorah umin HaNevi'im umin HaKsuvim, in all three parts of the written Torah, Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, it says, Me Hashem ish ish. Hashem determines which woman is going to marry which man. Min HaTorah, where do we see it in the Chumash? Tichsiv, it says in the Pasuk, Vayan, Lovon uBesuel, Lovon and Besuel both answered, Vayomer, and they said, Me Hashem yotza hadova. The matter stemmed from Hashem. Lenuchal daber elecha ra'ay toiv. We have no opinion in this, whether this shidduch should be or shouldn't be, and this was regarding Rivka getting married to Yitzchok. Min HaNevi'im Tichsiv, where in Nevi'im and Novi do we find that shidduchim are directly made by Hashem? Because it says in the Pasuk, in Shoftim, regarding Shimshon married somebody that his parents didn't really approve of, and it says in the Pasuk, V'ovi v'imoy lo yodu, what his parents didn't realize was, Ki me Hashem hi, that this was predestined from Hashem that he would marry this woman. And there was a reason for it, but we're not going into that now. You can have a look in Shoftim Perek Yud Dalet. Min aksuvim, where in ksuvim do we find this concept? It says in the pasuk in Mishlei, bayis, home, v'hoin, and wealth, nachlas avos, is the inheritance of the fathers, umei Hashem, isho maskeles, and an intelligent woman is given to a person by Hashem. So you see from Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim that Hashem is the one that makes shidduchim. And another quote from the same person, V'omar Rav mishum Reb Reuven ben Atzturvili. Again, Rav said in the name of this same Reb Reuven. V'omri lo b'masnita tona. Some say it was actually a brisa. Omar Reb Reuven ben Atzturvili, in the name of this Reb Reuven. Ein odom nechshad b'davar. A person is not accused and suspected of doing an avera elim kenasoy, unless he actually did it. If he didn't do the whole thing, he did part of it. If he didn't even do part of it, he had some thoughts and intentions of doing such an avera. And even he didn't have any thoughts and desires to do it, he saw others doing this avera of a somach and was glad. And since a person has got some association with this avera, that's why people could suspect him and accuse him of doing this avera. But a person who's got no association whatsoever to this avera, they would not be accusing him of doing it. Massive Rav Yaakov. Rav Yaakov is asking a question on this. That it says in the pasuk in Melachim, "Vayichapu b'nei Yisrael," that Klal Yisrael, the Bnei Yisrael, attributed bad things, asher lo yikein, that obviously didn't happen, al Hashem Eloheim. Vayivnu lohem bomois b'chol oreim mimigdal noitzrim ad ir mivtzar. So you see clearly that it's possible to accuse somebody of doing something that they clearly didn't do. Answers the Gemara, Hasam lehach ishuda avud. Over there they didn't really suspect Hashem or accuse Hashem. They were just provoking. Tashema. This is now a question we're going to ask against this last statement of Reb Reuven, who says that a person who's got no association to an avera would not be accused of doing it. It says in the pasuk, "Vayikanu," it's a pasuk in Tehillim, "Vayikanu leMoshe b'machne leAaron kadosh Hashem." They were jealous of Moshe in the camps of Aaron, who was kadosh Hashem, who was the Holy One to Hashem. What does that mean? Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchok Omer, all the men there, they warned their wives against being in a secluded place with Moshe Rabbeinu. They obviously were giving the impression of accusing Moshe Rabbeinu of doing something wrong with their wives, were he to be in a secluded place. Now Moshe clearly had no association to these types of averas. Answers the Gemara, Hasam mishum sinahu da'avid. There they just did it out of hatred of Moshe, but they didn't actually believe for a moment that Moshe would have done these averas. Tashema, another brisa question against Reb Reuven, Omer Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi said, Yehei chelki, this is Gemara in Shabbos Kuf Yud Ches, that my share should be in Misha Choishdin Oisei B'davar V'ein Boi, and my share in the world to come should be with those who are suspected of doing something that they're innocent of, that they didn't do. And that was Rabbi Yosi, the Omer of Papa. Of Papa also said, L'didi Choshdun, I was accused of doing something, V'lo Havabi, even though I was totally innocent. So you see here, Rabbi Yosi and Rav Papa, that it's possible to be accused of doing something even though they're totally innocent. This is against what Reb Reuven said before. Answers the Gemara, Lo Yikasha, it's not a contradiction. Ha bekola de posik. When the rumor stops at some point, we'll soon see at what point, but if the rumor stops, it's just a rumor for a short amount of time, then that's nothing. That's not the types of rumors we're talking about. That one can do against anyone. Ha bekola de lei posik. When Reb Reuven said that if you're accused of something, it must be you've got some association to it, that's talking about a rumor that doesn't stop. The kola delay posik ad kamo. How long does a rumor have to endure in order that you know this is a real rumor and obviously the person being accused has some association to it? Omar Abaya. Omroli Aim, Abaya said in the name of his mother. It wasn't really his mother because his mother died when he was very young. Is talking about the maid who was looking after him. Dumi Demosa, the suspicions in a city, Yomo Palga. They have to endure a day and a half. If they survive a day and a half, then there's something to it. V'hanimili. And when do we say that a rumor that's around for a day and a half points at some association to the Aveira? Delay posik beinu beina. If within the amount of time, a day and a half may be considered 36 hours, then a day and a half might be 36 hours, but with breaks in between. An accumulation of 36 hours, but with breaks. So the Hanamina Deloy Poska Beina Beina. A day and a half is only uninterrupted. Avol Posak Beina Beina, if it's interrupted, then Leslan Ba, then that's not considered a rumor with any substance. V'chiposik Beina Beina, and even when there is a break in between in the rumor, a few hours here, a few hours there, but it's not constant for a day and a half, that we said that's not considered a rumor with any substance. That's le'omron elu delei posak machmasira. That's only true if the reason that the rumor stopped intermittently, it was not because people had a fear of speaking about it. Avol posak machmasira. If the reason that it stopped here and there in the middle of the day and a half to accumulate to a day and a half with breaks was because of fear, loy, then we don't say that. And then since the rumors were discussed for a day and a half, even though there were breaks, but those breaks were just out of fear, therefore there is some substance to the rumor. We only say that if it didn't last long enough, that it's not considered a rumor that's got any substance, only if it didn't spring up and sprout up again at some point. Aval hodar novat, but if again the rumor sprout up at some point, loy, then we don't say that, and there is some substance to the suspicion. V'lo omron, and we don't say that there's substance to any type of rumor. Elo delesle oivim, only if he doesn't have any enemies. Aval isle oivim, if he does have enemies, oivim huda afkua lekola, we can assume that it's his enemies that issued the rumor, and therefore there's no substance to it at all, and it doesn't point in any direction that the person was associated to this Aveira. And Demir Hashem, in the next Shiur, we're going to continue the next Mishnah.